political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
Hey, thanks for watching our live stream. I'm the host, David Crayden. I'll be back in about 10 minutes with the show. In the meantime, have a look at some of these clips and take the opportunity, please, to like this broadcast, ring the bell, or subscribe.
And we're stepping up in every way we can because we know that Russia must win this war. That Ukraine must win this war against Russia.
Go down the list of things that Justin Trudeau disapproves of, and you can imagine all of the things that will be criminalized. That someone who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, who dressed up in hideous racist costumes so many times he says he can't remember them all, should then be the arbiter on what constitutes hate.
I did not call people who were unvaccinated names.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
For everything you did, thank you to put your life on the line for us. You're one of the greatest women I ever met in my life.
A lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Which people would say that?
Well, I'm sure a great many Canadians, but...
Like who?
I don't know who. But
we feel, because you all will have implants, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers.
Oh, no, Mr. Bond. I expect you to be chipped.
I'm a liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker.
This is a Manchurian candidate. For people who don't understand the expression, I'm not talking about the movie. I'm referring to somebody who can be used as a useful idiot by another country to come out and spout these things off. He is a Marxist.
End your silence. Speak up. For God's sake, stop complying. Start rebelling. They're out to get you if you do not resist.
Good buddy, mercy's sake alive. Looks like we got us a convoy.
Canadian country singer Paul Brandt here. I've been listening with my wife and 2 kids, and we want to say thank you for all you're doing in defense of civil liberties and freedom.
I'll ask the question I posed to you at the start of my round. Will you apologize on behalf of the government for this outrageous invite?
And
stand by the invitation.
Of course, what I said in my initial.
You have no shame.
What? Oh my heavens!
There is nothing they fear like the crystal clear sound of someone somewhere telling the truth.
So it will be a world integrating the physical, biological, and the digital dimensions. So it will be a new world.
Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because I can tell you, you cannot comply your way out of a tyranny.
Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes. I would say it's plain to see that the racket has been going from strength to strength ever since. In his farewell address to the American people in 1961, outgoing President and old soldier Dwight D. Eisenhower warned about the threat posed by what he was already able to identify as the military-industrial complex.
These are all small countries today. They're much like the Greek city-states in the age of the Roman Empire. We're a sort of declining Rome at this point. I hope Americans will figure that out and act against it, but we're a declining Rome. The European states are like the little Greek city-states that were entirely dependent upon Roman military power to save them from the Macedonians. This whole business is a sham. NATO is probably not going to survive.
From the Public Health Agency of Canada did not have the science to support this policy. So the government initiated a study with a guy named David Fisman at the University of Toronto. And this study was so bad, Madam Speaker, that there's a book called Fisman's Fraud the rise of Canadian hate science, and I just want to know how much money did they spend on these studies to support this Arrive scam when they knew that they didn't have the science to even support it from day one?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, the mega conservative far right is coming out. These are the anti, these are the ones that still deny the pandemic. And at the end of the day, thank goodness it was that Canadians and the majority of the people in the House saw the value of protecting the health and well-being of Canadians, and that the far right was marginalized back then, Madam Speaker, because as a direct result, more people are living today.
When did you and your government start to become so afraid of your own citizens?
The Online Harms Act. You heard about it? Well, I've got some bad news for you. It is aimed at your free speech.
Thank God for truckers.
They are so terrified that we, the people, may make what they think is the wrong choice. That in the name of protecting democracy and saving us from ourselves, they're actually destroying our democracy and taking away our freedom.
This is the worst assault on freedom of expression ever in Canadian history.
Donc le but, c'était de faire une pression économique, empêcher de faire.
So the goal was to put economic pressure on these people to stop them from buying groceries, paying into their health insurance, and get them out of the streets.
Not the characterization that I would put on it. The objective was to ensure that those who were funding the continued illegal blockade of this and other cities were no longer able to do so.
Okay. Donc vous n'avez pas répondu à ma question.
So you didn't answer my first question. In which other democratic country is it possible to do that?
Democratically passed legislation in this country pursuant to the Emergencies Act in Canada.
Okay, donc vous avez fait le droit là. Vous vous êtes inspiré de la Corée du Nord.
So what, were you inspired by North Korea for this?
No. I'm not going to respond to that type of question, Madam Chair.
No, mais
He's calling them domestic terrorists and wants to freeze their bank accounts. This has been absolutely outrageous. And everybody now is starting to agree that Justin Trudeau has lost this fight.
There will be consequences.
Justin Trudeau, though, this week said something I hated, which he called out. He said, the world we're starting to see the rise, the growth of authoritarianism and totalitarianism and dictatorships. And I couldn't believe that he said this with a straight face. Listen.
In all of our democracies, in every democracy around the world, we are seeing a rising movements of either authoritarian populism or skepticism about democracy itself. And we all need to recommit ourselves to standing up, not just for Ukraine, but through standing up for Ukraine, to the very principles that make our countries strong and free.
So Justin Trudeau says these comments, he says them with a straight face, as if he doesn't realize what's happening in his own country being led by him to clamp down on freedoms, the authoritarianism that he is presiding over in Canada.
Biden mourned Navalny's death. Even in prison, he was a powerful voice for the truth, he said. An interesting statement while journalist Julian Assange, who published Truth Inconvenient to the US and the West, presently rots in Belmarsh prison as he fights extradition to the US. I'm not yet aware of Biden mentioning, far less lamenting, the death in a Ukrainian prison of US citizen and writer Gonzalo Lira, who was critical of the Zelensky regime. Biden's administration has sought determinedly to jail his and their strongest and most popular opponent, Donald Trump. And yet, in the immediate aftermath of Navalny's death, Biden highlighted Vladimir Putin's desperate attempts to stamp out the opposition. Zelensky, propped up only by Western cash, has crushed his own political opponents as well. The pattern seems clear. Bleat about enemies threatening democracy, while simultaneously and blatantly and hypocritically seeking to trample on democracy at home, or turn a blind eye to the same being carried out by allies, or make that business partners.
Yes, hi again. This is one of our stickers that I showed you last week. We have those available, and I see people have been lining up to buy them. Well, not exactly, but yeah, there have been some sales of these. I encourage you to have a look on the store. A couple of new things to talk about that we haven't shown you before. If I can just get the camera here. This is the magnet. This is handy for your filing cabinet, maybe at work or at home, or your fridge. Shows your loyalty to stand on guard, your interest at least. So I encourage you. These are available on the store right now. We also want to draw your attention to the cup. Unfortunately, so far, available only in this size here. But bound to be a sure seller. Give yourself at least a week and a half or 2 weeks for shipment for these. We did not get them very quickly. Hopefully that will increase, or I should say, hopefully that will get better in time. But right now it's not exactly fast. So just a warning, not as fast as the t-shirt. So those are new. The cup will be available by the late afternoon Eastern Standard Time, certainly by the end of the day. And we'll get that ready for you so you can start toasting the day with your coffee in the morning with a stand on guard cup and a resolve to resist. And we are resolving to resist. Thanks for staying here. Yeah, I forgot the question period was canceled this week. They're off again. Back to the constituency again. I just find that incredible. They were just off for 2 weeks and they're back again. And of course, what is bad about this is that the budget was released last week, right? There was tremendous pushback, resistance by not only the right, or whatever the right is anymore, the anti-Trudeau forces that were small c conservative, small l libertarian, in the Conservative Party of Canada, capital C. But there's mounting opposition from the left as well, saying that there's really nothing here except some freebies and some buyouts and some offerings for Gen Z or Gen Z, however you want to say it, Gen X, for younger people, which are not really that tangible. There's some airy-fairy idea of they're going to be 4 million new homes built, and this is going to be there for the younger generation to make life easier. It's all really so nebulous. It's all built on a foundation that is on sand, to use a biblical allusion there. And I find this absolutely frightening, what's going on here in terms of this government has lost touch not only with ordinary Canadians, but often with reality. And this is very troublesome. This budget is disastrous. As I said last week, even former Bank of Canada Governor David Dodge, a liberal, capital L, liberal, said this was the worst budget in 3 decades. He had to go back to Alan McKechnie, who you might not remember, but I do actually. He was one of Pierre Trudeau's finance ministers, and those were pretty lean years in the early 80s in Canada. So that's how far back he's going to say this was one bad budget. And I have to concur. A couple of housekeeping items as well. I hope you had a chance to watch the interview that I featured in a post, a broadcast, very brief part of the entire interview, but that fantastic interview were more of a dialogue really between Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. Now have a look at that if you haven't. I think it's been suppressed on YouTube. Certainly my attempt to put up what I thought were some of the more salient points that we need to be cognizant of. I believe YouTube shut that down. It's got far fewer views than it should have. Watch it if you have a chance, because he talks about some very, very important things, like the Kennedy assassination, which I think we all agree was not reported accurately by the Warren Commission,
answers were not obtained. We all know, we all moved on from there decades ago. But some interesting comments about Watergate, interesting comments about how the deep state, how the intel community, and I've stopped calling it the intelligence community, not just because it doesn't accurately reflect who they are. There's very little cerebral activity going on with the intelligence community. They're bloody incompetent. They could not see how things were going in Afghanistan when the Taliban were advancing, progressing way faster than U.S. intelligence had any idea of. And they completely bungled Afghanistan to the point where the Americans left without taking a lot of people with them and leaving billions, tens of billions of dollars of military hardware on the ground for the Taliban to pick up and use or resale. And that, of course, was a complete failure of U.S. intelligence. But I wrote an article last week, of course, which I hope you had a chance to read, about how America has become a police state. There's so many security agencies, paramilitary police forces, in addition to the FBI, that can come up to your doorstep in full combat gear with assault rifles and take you away, arrest you at the point of a gun. And the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, and the United States can do this now. The Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Directorate can do this to you, and on and on. But even more dangerous, perhaps, is the growth of the intelligence community in the United States, the network of intelligence, which I just want to clearly and plainly call the spy network. That's what these guys do. They spy. And they're doing such a horrible job of spying on America's real enemies that they spy on domestic, so-called domestic terrorists. They spy on Americans. That's what they do best now, is interfere in the lives of ordinary Americans. And that's what the intelligence, so-called intelligence community is doing. In addition to lying about things like Hunter Biden's laptop, which 51 former retired members of the intel or spy network claimed was nothing but disinformation, when in fact it turned out to be nothing but true and had nothing to do with Russian disinformation, any more than Donald Trump was colluding with Russia in the 2016 presidential election. All a hoax, all nonsense, but all promoted and moved forward by the spy network in the United States. So part 2 of this will be coming out in the next couple of days. I encourage you to have a look at that, because if you think it's any different in Canada, it's not. We are being spied upon. We are part of the Five Eyes, which includes ourselves, the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. These are essentially the great English-speaking democracies. And the Five Eyes have been subverted by woke politics and by Justin Trudeau to the point that they are spying on Canadians or passing on intelligence, so-called, to each other. Such as this bogus report that there was a militia, some secret underground militia behind the Freedom Convoy. Turned out to be complete rubbish, absolute nonsense, but it's passed on through the Five Eyes network. This is not only absolute prevarication, absolute mendacity, it's dangerous. And it's putting people, ordinary Canadians, in harm's way. And it is completely uncalled for. But this is the way things are going in our society. So a couple of other things I wanted to bring you up to speed on. As I was saying, the problem is when they all go home after a budget, the pressure is off. The pressure is off for a week because they're not there bringing it up every day in Question Period. Now, you all watch Question Period with me every day. I see comments every day about, I can't stand any more of this. Because they don't get answers. And sometimes the questions are not that great either. But unfortunately, the news media in Canada hangs a lot of its questions and hangs a lot of its coverage on question period. It has become part of the media stream, becomes part of the media tradition for so many decades that it's hard to break that habit. So it's really not about getting answers to any questions in that hour in the House of Commons. It's about raising the profile of issues so the media is encouraged, at least, to follow up. And so they ask these questions of the official opposition after question period at news conferences, and hopefully we keep these issues raised. When they've all gone home to the constituency for the week, that just doesn't happen. And of course, they've all gone home. And we are not getting the coverage of the issues that we need, including ArriveCan, which, yes, is still being covered in committee, but it's not getting adequate coverage in question period, including the election interference by China. I think we had Trudeau on the ropes with this issue. We basically caught this guy once again misrepresenting what he knew when he knew it, lying about receiving briefings, lying about what he actually knew about Chinese election interference, and we left him there. Not a single, maybe one question in a week or two about that Chinese election interference. Folks, that's unacceptable. We have to do better in terms of the opposition asking the questions we need. We also need to hear more about the Online Harms Act, which is progressing forward. The legislative work continues on this. And I don't want to be in a position of having this thing in front of us at first reading and there having been no concerted or organized opposition to it in the House of Commons. We also need more opposition to this from the media. I can't do it alone. We need more media out there, and not just new media, but independent media. And I've seen some good work from some of my colleagues in the independent media. And I will say him by name. Clyde Do Something has done some good work on this. He's actually interviewed people. I'm not seeing much from other people except the usual nonsense and clickbait. So, but Clyde has done some great work in this. I want to in publicly say that and say, keep it up, because we need everybody on this fight. We need everybody fighting this fight who loves free speech and who thinks Canada can still be a democratic nation. That's what we really need in this country. And we're not getting that from the legacy media. There were a couple of columns a day or two after the legislation was announced, Bill C-63. There has been virtually nothing from the mainstream media columnists. Those at a high profile have said nothing. And it's got to be repealed if it's passed, but preferably be a heck of a lot easier never to have this legislation passed in the first place. And hopefully this budget and the increasing pressure on the New Democratic Party to resist the carbon tax will mean an early election. I'm not promising anything, and I'm not saying I know anything. I know there are members, I know this, there are members of the NDP caucus who are sick of being lackeys for the Liberals, who are sick of propping up this government, but there are few and far between. Most of them are content to pretend to be critics once or twice a week and to keep propping it up. But the pressure is mounting, and if you have an NDP MP, if you're listening today and your MPs from the NDP, put pressure on that member to be a human being, to be an MP with some principle, with some guts, with some backbone, and tell he or she to oppose the Liberal government because it is killing Canada. And this budget is doing nothing but adding to the debt. And that is going to be the legacy of Justin Trudeau. This is the guy who said the national debt, the deficit, the budget will take care of itself. Yeah, it certainly has, hasn't it? Another $40 billion of debt last week added to our national debt. $52.9 billion in new spending. Nothing but bribes that will add up to virtually nothing.
So I encourage you all out there, continue to fight the Online Harms Act. Continue to be a warrior, a cultural warrior against what the Liberals are doing. And we need to get back to what's important for Canada. People have asked me, why don't you talk more about the war in the Middle East? Because I'll tell you why. We have all been played by the globalists with this war in the Middle East. All this war has done is created more potential danger for Israel, more potential danger for a third world war to break out in the Middle East, if it doesn't already do so in Ukraine. All it has done is divide Canadians again on the basis of identity politics. And we need people of faith in this country, all faiths, to unify under the banner of let's get Trudeau out, under the banner of let's have a party that doesn't interfere in the lives of my children, that doesn't try to indoctrinate my children in extremist, environmental, and LGBTQ policies at school, that doesn't say it's okay for a 12-year-old to get a sex change, that doesn't try to indoctrinate my children in gender ideology. Let's fight for a government that says, leave that to parents and to families. And to do that, people of faith in Canada have to get back to basics. They have to get beyond these foreign wars. They have to get beyond being fixated on what's happening overseas and become focused on what's happening in their own backyard, with school boards, with provincial governments, with the federal government, with municipal governments that are taking our rights away and are taking our children away and are telling us the state can raise our children. That's why I'm actively encouraging Christian, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs to work together on the basis of what they agree with, which is a heck of a lot more than what they disagree with. And if we don't get together and overrule and overwhelm Justin Trudeau's identity politics that divide Canadians on the basis of race, ethnicity, and a host of other factors, we are going to lose. And Justin Trudeau and his woke ideology will win. It's up to us to fight back. So I'm encouraging that today. I've got broadcasts every day this week. We will be talking about the issues that matter. We will be doing interviews. We'll be going out and talking to the people we need to talk to ensure that you are well informed. I had a comment last week thanking me for doing this work to keep us informed. That's the primary reason I'm doing this. I'm not making promises I can't keep. I'm not giving you clickbait that is nothing but BS. I'm not telling you it's over for Justin Trudeau this week or next week, because it's not. But I'll tell you what, I'll end on this note. Justin Trudeau is a wounded politician. He is under attack not only by opposition politicians, by media like this one and others that are fighting back, but his own caucus is now doing a very quiet and very clandestine leadership review. Yes, and we know now that Dominic LeBlanc, although he's pretending he's still on side with his good friend Justin Trudeau, Dominic LeBlanc is certainly not denying there's a leadership review going on behind the scenes, and the Justin Trudeau's days are numbered. And I think it's very, very important that we acknowledge that. I want to show you this. Interview again.
Dominic LeBlanc is responding to a column in the Globe and Mail that reported he's considering a run to replace Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party. It was a surprising report because LeBlanc is known as one of the Prime Minister's closest friends and allies, but it was also detailed in laying out that a meeting took place, a decision was taken at that meeting to start the groundwork for a bid to replace the Prime Minister. Today on Parliament Hill, CTV's Jordan Gowling asked the minister if the report was true.
Do you plan to run for Liberal leader?
No, I plan to be a candidate in the next election under Prime Minister Trudeau's leadership. I'm very happy. I'm excited about that. I'm focused on the responsibilities he gave me. It's a big job. I'm enjoying it, and I'm optimistic. that our team and the Prime Minister will make the case to Canadians as to why we should be re-elected.
Have you been having discussions, though, about a potential run in the near future?
I've answered that.
Do you think the Prime Minister should resign?
So you are not organizing, sir, correct?
So that's the word, sort of, from Public Safety and Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Has he thrown enough cold water on the story to assuage suspicions, or could a Liberal leadership challenge be in the works?
You better believe a Liberal leadership challenge is in the works. When you get that much out of Dominic LeBlanc and he doesn't deny the story entirely, you know there's something going on here. So Justin Trudeau is under attack, but a wounded Justin Trudeau, a Justin Trudeau under attack is even more dangerous than a Justin Trudeau who thinks he's not under attack, who thinks he's not vulnerable. He will do everything possible to advance his agenda, and I believe seize power even more vociferously than he has already. And we have to worry about what he will do in the next 18 months to avoid having another election and to stay in power, not only as Prime Minister, but as leader of the Liberal Party when he's facing so many different attacks. So thanks for watching today. I will be back again tomorrow with more of the news, more of the information you need to know. No question period this week, but I've still got lots of questions for this Liberal government, and I'll continue to ask them. Thanks for watching.